The only pharmacy in St. Germain closed last month. It had been there for more than 40 years.
The reason why it went out of business is complicated, and it includes a type of business you probably never heard of. Our own Shauna Johnson has been following the story. Shauna?
Hey guys, I don't know about you, but before I started digging into this story, I had never heard of a pharmacy benefit manager, also known as a PBM.
I had never heard of one either, Shauna. What is a PBM?
They were originally created in the 1960s to negotiate lower prices for drugs between manufacturers and pharmacies. But slowly, they became much more than that. They now act as middlemen, also adding fees and buying out their competition. Take a look at insulin, for example. It only takes at most $6 to produce, but it can cost hundreds of dollars to diabetics, largely because of PBMs. 3 specifically that now dominate the market: Optum Rx, CVS Caremark, and Express Scripts. I visited the Eagle River Hometown Pharmacy to learn how this is affecting the healthcare system.
It's horrible. It's very horrible.
Amanda Altimore of St. Germain said she had to get a ride to the Eagle River Hometown Pharmacy just to get her prescription.
I feel really bad for our elderly that's been going there forever, and people like me who don't have a car.
Larry Thompson managed the Hometown Pharmacy in St. Germain for 18 years and said closing it down has been heartbreaking, leaving elderly, disabled, and needy people without near access to potential life-saving medications.
We just feel horrible that it came to this. It's not fair. It should not have come to this, but big corporate healthcare is basically squeezed us out of business.
Dan Strauss co-founded Hometown Pharmacy. It now has over 70 independent pharmacies focused on personalized patient care. Strauss said difficulty finding a pharmacist at the St. Germain location was the final straw, but that wasn't the root of the problem.
Every day we have patients that come in tears because they can't afford their medicines.
Strauss said PBMs have a significant behind-the-scenes impact in determining total drug costs for insurers, shaping patients' access to medications, inflating the amount that people pay for prescription drugs, and determining how much pharmacies are paid.
It's a terrible scheme that basically is why America has the highest drug prices. And PBM's at the heart of it, and they enjoy this position of nobody knows they even exist, much less what they do.
PBMs function as the middlemen between insurance providers and pharmaceutical manufacturers, and they are profiting from both.
Basically, a business that 99% of people never heard of is negatively impacting their access and their costs to prescription medicines.
PBM's growing influence has been directly felt by Larry Thompson.
And there'd be a squeeze here, the next year there'd be another squeeze. It seemed to be a coordinated effort between all the PBMs. They would all lower their reimbursements by roughly the same each year. And now with these DIR fees, that has been just a horrible situation. It's been like a death by 1,000 cuts. Every year it gets tighter and tighter. And it's gotten to the point where many of the prescriptions we feel we're not even getting reimbursed the cost of the product, much less any type of profit margin.
DIR fees from PBMs were relatively minor 10 years ago, but they have exploded by over 100,000% by then. Strauss said the average pharmacy gets hit between $75,000 and $150,000 a year in DIR fees just because they can. Another issue Hometown Pharmacy has to overcome is called steerage. The large PBMs that own 85% of the market often own big chain pharmacies, so they will send patients to their pharmacies to make more money, even if they're much farther away.
Even if there's St. Germain Pharmacy right next door, you have to go to CVS 75 miles away. And the insurance card in your pocket tells you where you can go. You no longer have free choice as a consumer.
Strauss says this is a problem everyone should be made aware of.
I think the more people know, the more they can and should be angry about it, and then can they tell their legislators that this is something that needs to be rectified.
Late in 2023, Senator Mary Felskowski helped introduce the Pharmacy Benefit Manager Accountability legislation. It is designed to empower patients and protect pharmacies from unjust practices by PBMs.
Cole Schmitnick was a 22-year-old young man living in Appleton, Wisconsin, who loved video games and sports. His parents, Bill and Shannon, described him as an inspirational, free spirit with a love for being heard.
He was definitely one of a kind.
Cole was diagnosed with severe asthma at only a year old. He had just recently moved out on his own with opportunities to chase dreams until his life was cut short.
January 10th, he went to his pharmacy to get his prescription and was told it was no longer covered by his insurance.
He was told there was no alternative and no generic. Cole didn't know how to respond and couldn't cover the extreme out-of-pocket cost of his Advair inhaler on a $19 an hour income. An inhaler-dependent patient left Walgreens Pharmacy with no medication. 5 days later, he suffered an extreme asthma attack and was taken to the hospital. He arrived at the ER, lifeless, where he spent the next 6 days in the ICU on a ventilator.
We were told, he's never going to wake up again. And
What happened to Cole is happening all over the country. A generic version of Advair only costs between $15 and $20.
Unfortunately, we see even the state plan now no longer will allow for the generic. They force people into the brand. Why? Well, it's not hard to figure out. It has to be about profit margin. Unfortunately, they're making people decide between life-saving medicine here for cost, even though the cost of the actual item is so low.
Dan Strauss, co-founder of Hometown Pharmacy, said enough is enough.
We just find this is absolutely wrong. It's infuriating. We should all be angry. We hope we tell you legislators that this needs to be addressed sooner than later.
In the last legislative session, the Pharmacy Benefit Manager Regulation Bill wasn't brought to a vote. The bill was designed to create transparency in the system and prohibit the PBM's control over the pharmaceutical industry as a whole.
We're very frustrated that it never got a chance to be voted upon.
Strauss said there are a lot of negative speculations as to why the bill didn't make it to the floor.
In politics, there's a lot of moving parts. And we believe that the recent vote for Wisconsin mapping is part of it, because there's an awful lot of energy and focus on what the next election is going to be. And of course, the elections are very, very expensive, and you have to fund those elections.
Strauss believes that money from lobbying groups associated with the PBMs have a strong influence on lawmakers.
Unfortunately, it means that money and influence is a significant factor in us passing bills, especially ones that affect all of our livelihoods and our health.
Bill and Shannon said after learning of PBMs and the tactics that cost them their son, they were angry and decided it was time to speak up.
I don't want you to ever have to imagine.
yeah, don't.
I don't want anyone to ever have to experience this.
Their goal is to share Cole's story and raise awareness.
You know, we just kind of feel like this is now our fight to fight for him.
Absolutely. We want to just, if we can prevent it in one other person, I mean, just that alone would be a little solace or a little something. I know we can never have our son back. He's gone.
Cole's situation is not the only one, and this can happen to anyone. Every day, life-saving medications are becoming inaccessible to patients who need them.
We need our senators and our congressmen to help this process. That's why they're there in office, for our complaints, our concerns, our needs. And, the games that are played are just costing lives.
Reporting from Rhinelander, Shauna Johnson, Newswatch 12.
Have you ever wondered why healthcare is so challenging? Where do the issues people are forced to deal with even come from? Well, it's kind of complicated. At the heart of these issues is a group called PBMs, Pharmacy Benefit Managers.
PBMs were originally created in the 1960s to negotiate lower prices for drugs between manufacturers and pharmacies, but slowly they became much more than that. They now act as middlemen, with the power to hold your health care in their hands. Dan Strauss, former CEO of Hometown Pharmacy, now a patient advocate, shares more.
99% of us are not even sure what a PBM is, much less their stranglehold on health care. We've acknowledged that, and we realize we need to help people understand. So we've created a website called patientprotector.us.
On Patient Protector, you'll find a history of PBMs, what they do, where they came from, and what they do now.
Which are 3 different stories. Where they came from was good, where they are now is scary.
Since becoming aware of PBMs, patients have begun to come forward with stories sharing how they have been negatively affected by unjust PBM practices.
Have you been told which pharmacy you have to go to? Has your doctor prescribed you a medicine that you go to the pharmacy and you can't get because somebody you don't even know says you can't have that, you have to fail first?
This is called step therapy.
Many of us heard it, but what does that actually mean? So it means that the doctor says a prescription X we know will work for you, but the PBM does not make as much of a rebate on that medicine. So you go to your pharmacy and your pharmacist says, I'm sorry, your insurance doesn't cover that. And insurance and PBMs are intertwined. And the PBMs hide behind insurance, but they're the ones making that decision.
Leaving patients to question, if the doctors say I need this medicine, why can't I get it?
Well, you have to fail first. That means that the cheaper one that they want you on, that they make the most money on, has to actually negatively impact you. You have to have a reaction to it. You have to fail and suffer before Now you can actually get the medicine that your doctor and pharmacist wanted you on all along.
Strauss said the PBMs live in an unregulated, unlicensed world. And with that, they are able to call the shots, and unfortunately, it's always about the money and not about the patients.
I'm an autoimmune kind of gal. It runs in the family, it is what it is.
Christine Schraw shares her story.
I had a really good medication regime.
But then, things changed. Her husband, Michael, had changed jobs, so they switched insurance companies.
Then I started getting notifications from our insurance company that they were evaluating our medications.
They felt there were medications that needed to be reevaluated and changed. So the step therapy process of pass and fail began.
One of my medications actually had a pass-fail of 7 different medications, 2 weeks each, 14 weeks, well over 3 months of not having the medication that you're taking that has been working for many, many years.
It was a formulary change. Changes regarding your health that are being made by someone you've never met that isn't even a medical professional.
I was so sick. I couldn't eat. I was doubled over from the side effects.
To make matters worse, Christine suffers from multiple oral allergies such as PFAS and dye colorants. 3 of the medications she was forced to try had components that caused allergic drug reactions, wreaking havoc on an autoimmune patient's system. Christine was told at different points by both PBMs and large chain pharmacies to manage her allergic reactions to these trial meds by taking antihistamines such as Benadryl.
I'm forced to trust a non-medical professional who's telling me to take a medication that my doctor says otherwise. I should be taking something else, but it didn't matter.
For Christine, that meant her insurance would not cover the $2,000 cost until she tried and failed on these other medications, regardless of the effects they may have on her health.
So you sort of feel like you're held hostage, right?
It took Christine several months and hours spent on the phone to advocate for herself.
They're following some cheat sheet or some flow chart to talk to people. And I said, is there any medical professional available at all? Oh no, we can't. We have a board that has a pharmacist on it.
In the state of Wisconsin, pharmacists are not allowed to prescribe medications. Christine said after months of being without the medication she needed, she finally received a call back from an empathetic pharmacist on the PBM board who allowed her 30 days of the medication she needed.
So that was the best that she could do, and I got 30 days, and within 3 days, I was well again.
Christine said it's unfortunate good doctors are being driven out of their practice because their hands are tied and they are not even able to determine which medications their patients are getting.
It is all financially based. It has nothing to do with the wellness of the person, because if it did, I wouldn't have been that sick.
If you or someone you know has been affected by this, it's time to be heard. Share your story at patientprotector.us and stay tuned as we dive into more tomorrow.